Hello there, my name is Jim, and in this video I'm going to be walking you through some sequence control options on the vector sequencer. So at the end of our last video we had a simple sequence running, and in this video we're going to skip over all these edit pages here and go straight to the yellow button Control, also known as Sequence Control. And these are parameters that are global to the sequence, meaning that you're not editing a step at a time, you're editing parameters that affect all steps one way or another. And you can get to this page by taking Control, and there are actually 3 pages, sometimes 4 in here, and you can use the button, the sequence control button, to flip between them, or you can use encoder 9. And on any other page where you can do this, you can see this little symbol here pointing from the page name to encoder 9 to give you an indication you can use that for navigation. Okay, so let's start with start, but also with the second parameter, length. And these two parameters show which steps of the sequence are active within the maximum number of steps for the sequence. Now, the default number of steps for new parts on the vector is 16 steps, and that can be 32 or 64, but we'll cover that in a different video. To flip between the first 8 and the second 8 steps, you can use the next and previous buttons, and you can cycle through, so you can keep hitting next to flip between them. And then on the control page you can say which of these 16 steps are actually active, and the default is just the first 8, starting with step 1. Okay, so let's start messing around by playing the sequence and then changing these two parameters. So you can see that this is an interesting way to mess with a playing sequence, and in fact these are interesting parameters to modulate. We'll cover that 2 or 3 videos down the line. If I want to move to a 16-step sequence, of course, I just push the length up to 16 steps, and let's page over, and we just have straight G's here, so we can edit a few values, maybe adjust the gate time a little bit. So that's start and length. I'm going to turn this back to 8 for now, make it easier to see what's going on. Next up we have direction. We have a few different modes here. We have forwards, backwards, 2 alternating modes. The first mode will not repeat the steps at the end of the sequence. The second mode will, so let me play those real quick. Starting with forwards. And then lastly we have random. We'll put that back to forward. Next we have reset, which if you're coming from numerology land is also called hard sync. Basically this is how the sequencer determines when to reset to step 1. By default it's automatic, meaning when you hit step 8 or whatever the end step is for the sequence, it will automatically reset to step 1. But you can also change it to be some number, and this is in beats. So let's say that we set it to 3 beats. So what's going on here? Our sequence is in 16th notes, which means that 4 steps is 1 beat. So if we look at our pitches, we have 4 steps here for 1 beat, 4 steps here for 1 beat. So if I set reset to auto, we have 2 beats, and you can follow that with the beat counter in the top right of the first OLED. But if I set reset to be 3 beats, now it will play 4 steps, and then as the sequence continues automatically back to step 1, it'll repeat 4 steps, and then it will reset an extra time. So this is another way to mix things up. Another handy trick is to set reset to 4 when you're working with a sequence that is an odd number of steps long. This is a way to force the sequence back to a bar line, either even, odd bars, whatever you like. So I'm going to set that to 5 steps with a reset of 4 and play the sequence. Let's put these back to their default values. So next up we have rate and mode. These two parameters are closely related. We'll start with mode. Mode is how you specify the rate. So MDV means musical divisions, and /16th means 16th notes. And I can change this to be, say, eighth notes or quarter notes or half notes, whole notes, and so forth. I can go as slow as 32 whole notes. Get this back to, actually this is a good time to show another shift trick. If I hold down shift and turn this encoder, it will half or double the rate in musical division time. And remember back from editing pitch, if you hold down shift and change pitch, it will jump in octaves. So sort of the equivalent for that for rates is halves and doubles. There are other modes in here. So we have PCT for percent of a beat, speed, which is a speed mode where faster rates are faster and slower rates are slower. Percent of a beat is the reverse. 25% of a beat is the 16th note. So as I decrease the rate, the sequence actually runs faster. And as I increase the rate, it runs slower. Here's speed mode. In this case, higher numbers is faster, and lower numbers are slower. All right, next up we have three what I call crossfade modes. We have X16, X8T, and X8. These allow you to move the rate from a rate that is half as fast as the default rate, where rate is 0, to twice as fast. So for X16, the default rate at 0 is a 16th note. So it allows you to move from half that fast, which is an 8th note, to twice as fast, which would be a 32nd note. So let's start the sequence and I'll dial through those. So we're at 16th notes now. As I decrease the rate, which goes down to 100, we are steadily slowing down until we get to 8th notes. And then as I speed it back up, we get back to 16th notes at 0. And then as we increase it, we'll get to 32nd notes. Similar to X16, X8T works with 8th note triplets as the base rate and moves between 16th and quarter note triplets. And X8 moves with 8th notes as the default, 16th notes is the fastest, and quarter notes is the slow version. So these three rates are good when you want to have something that is distinctly off tempo from everything else. And in particular, if you have a part that's in straight 16th notes, and then you have another in X16 with a relatively small variation, they will slowly get in and out of phase. Okay, so after these three modes, we have dedicated phasing modes, P16, P8T, and P8, and these are very similar to the X modes, except they are a much narrower range of rates. So as I decrease the rate, it slows down, but not nearly as much as it would with X16. So if you're working in a dedicated area where you like to have phasing with very long periods where things go in and out of phase, the P modes are the way to go. And next we have a series of fractional modes. The rate is the numerator and the mode is a denominator compared to a beat. So let's start the sequence. Now we're at 110. Let's speed things up to 120. So we're at quarter notes. If I increase the mode to /4, we're at 1/4 of a beat, also 16th notes. If I increase the rate to 2, we're at 2/4, also known as 1/2 of a beat, so 8th notes. If I move rate up to 4, now we're back to 4/4, which is 1/1, and that's a beat. I can set mode up to /16. So this, when you start to move around in these different ranges, you can find a lot of unusual rate modes that are different from a regular musical grid in many cases, but also consistent with themselves in the sense that they will, their integer values, their integer ratios, so they will repeat at predictable intervals. So last up in the long list of rate modes, we have the trigger modes, T1 through T6. These are only available currently if you have an expander attached, and I'll cover them separately, but what they allow you to do is use some other source, such as an LFO or a separate clocking source, to manually step a sequence. Okay, so to continue on, we'll go back to musical divisions. And now the last two parameters, which are the simplest, octave and transpose. So we'll start the sequence again. Octave moves the entire sequence up and down an octave. Transpose in semitones. Up or down, up to 2 octaves. And also of note, on this page only, the MIDI keyboard below the main 8 encoders can be used to transpose using the MIDI keyboard. So I start the sequence, I press the G on the MIDI keyboard, and it will transpose by 7 semitones, otherwise known as a fifth. Or I can press the C, the white button under encoder 8 to go up an octave. Press the C under encoder 1 to go back to transpose of 0. You can also use previous and next to transpose up and down. So previous and the first white button goes down an octave. Or say previous and the G goes down 5 semitones. Release and previous, hit C to go back to normal. Hold down next, press C, up an octave, press C on the right, up 2 octaves. So that's a quick overview of the main sequence control page. Tune in next time and we'll be covering several of these other edit pages.